Hello everybody and welcome along in to another video. Welcome back to Fire Them Cannons. And yeah, we had a bit of a break for a couple weeks in terms of pouring in the content. Just had to sort of, just reset the brain, reset the energy, the mentality. Heading into this final stretch of games for Arsenal. Today we're going to do a video. We're basically going to special under pressure. We haven't done under pressure for a while, but we're going to underline what's been going wrong with Arsenal over the last couple of games. Two massive games. One, Carabao Cup final at Wembley. The other one, an FA Cup quarterfinal away at St. Mary's. Both of which saw our quadruple and our treble dreams go to die. And now we are just left, obviously, with the two big ones, of course, but we're kind of get into it because I just feel like there's a lot of just narratives out there about Arsenal. When it comes to Arsenal, it's always so hyperbolic, whether it's the fans, the rivals, everyone's going to set up, a certain expectation of Arsenal, a certain narrative about Arsenal. And I just want to just jump into the analysis of things. Who's to blame? What's actually gone wrong in the last two games? And why I still believe, of course, that the rest of the season from here on out can be a really good one for Arsenal. So make sure you're liking, make sure you're subscribing to Fire Them Cannons. This is Under Pressure. All right. Okay, guys. Well, this is something we're going to do on for the very first time. Again, make sure you're hitting the like button. Make sure you're subscribing. Share it. Share the content across all your social media platforms. Share it to your friends on YouTube. The more the merrier, guys. We are just trying to build this community. And yeah, look, we're going to have content for you every single day this week. So look out for all of that. We're going to have some live shows, everything. Sporting Lisbon. Hopefully it's going to be a better game. We're going to have a post-game show for that. But today, I'm in the study. We're going to do a zero in, as I mentioned, on what's gone wrong these last two games. Rather than just sitting there and being reactionary and talking about, oh, I want Arteta out, or I want this player gone, or that player gone. Like, the way we play is boring. I'm worried, X, Y, Z. If Arsenal don't win, 2 trophies at least, Arteta should... None of that stuff. Because obviously a lot of it is nonsense. And a lot of it is just rival fans setting a trap that they've now gotten the ability to kind of, spring on us. And Arsenal fans, of course, falling into it. And look, I have to take some blame into it, of course. Before we get into this, I did on many occasions say, look, and I started to buy into the idea that Arsenal could win them all, win all the trophies, win the quad. I thought very much. We had another show with Dan last week. Could Arsenal win the treble? But it came from a certain formula that Arsenal have been putting together all throughout the season this year. It came from a certain level of expectation, a certain level of standard of quality in Arsenal's play, a winning standard. I wish I could put the graphic for you on the screen, but Arsenal played 51 games, and yeah, now it's looking less impressive more that the games go by. But inside those 51 games, Arsenal have only lost now 5 times. So it's just under, I believe, 10%. Let's see. What's 5 divided by 51? It's 9.8% of the time Arsenal have lost this season. But 2 of them have been in the last 2 games. And let's not make no mistake about it. I'm not going to be the type of fan who's going to go and say, hey, the FA Cup, the Carabao Cup, they weren't important. Now, look, I have said on many occasions in the past, are they 3rd and 4th in my priority list? If we only had won these trophies, would it have been good enough? I would have said no. The two that are remaining on the table, though, are the ones that Arsenal and Arteta absolutely must have. At least one of them. At least one of them, in order for this current iteration of how Arsenal is run, to be able to have the backing and the faith and to continue on. Because honestly, however, given how far we got into the Carabao Cup, I really wanted to go and beat, given who we were playing, I really wanted to go ahead and beat those guys, beat Manchester City. This FA Cup, I felt like we were privileged. So far, not so far, that's it. But, we had never drawn any Premier League opposition in the FA Cup, right? Portsmouth, Arsenal they won 4-1 away against Wigan. I believe, what was Arsenal-Wigan's score? Look it up quite quickly. Arsenal. Oh God, I had too much for my own good. Shows you that we don't edit this stuff. Oh yeah, Arsenal won 4-0. That's actually the score I would have had in my head. Then we went, to Mansfield Town. We got Mansfield Town from League 2, League 1. Mansfield Town made it a really tough game as well that day. We can even talk. We'll get into that a little bit as well. And Arsenal go ahead and they exit with a 2-1 win away at Mansfield Town to get to this side. And okay, we got Southampton. Now, I didn't feel about Southampton like I did about those other three teams. And you can go back on all the videos that we watched previewing this game. I didn't say I would do what Arteta did. I said we have to take this seriously. I see Southampton St. Mary's as a tough place to go. And again, it shows you that I'm not just all super positive of all times. I do kind of feel the way this club is. But let's break it down. Let's talk about Arsenal in the recent one. And first I'll start off with, I've done this. It's the first time I've ever done this on here. It's another kind of first things first, or FS. Well, they've done this on the Herd as well. FS1 sort of segment that I've picked out here, and it's called Blame Pie. So we're going to do Arsenal Blame Pie, and this is basically just for the last two games, because I think a lot of people like to take those two games and generalize it across the entire season and say, oh, Arsenal have been poor the whole season, and I'm not ever going to lie and do that stuff. That's never going to be me. I'm always going to be genuine, and that's the way I've been the whole time. Like, honestly, everyone thinks I'm super toxic, positive, whatever. I just tell you what I believe. And here we go. Let's go with Arsenal Blame Pie. Firstly, you'll see that there are different percentages here around the pie chart of blame for the last kind of games, and one of them holds half of the blame. I think you can guess who that is. It's Mikel Arteta. Now, let's break down why, and I think there are different reasons for both games why it's Mikel Arteta. Let's start off with the Man City game. Now, for the Man City game, of course, it's interesting because when you looked at the lineup originally, you're like, you know what, let's go. But there was one thing in that lineup that everyone said prior to it picked out as something that was needed to be changed. And it's going to be a theme that we talk about throughout, what Arteta has done in this little piece here. It is Kepa Arrizabalaga, just to start off with. It's the idea of, hey, this guy got me this far. Let's let him finish the job. But the thing here is that not all games, not all opponents are created equal. Arsenal, in this scenario, are in a cup final against Manchester City. A Manchester City team who, by the way, is the big scary monster, and they're starting to look scary again in everybody's eyes. We keep going back. It's funny because, we go through these cycles where, Arsenal look unbeatable, then City look unbeatable, and Arsenal look unbeatable, and City look unbeatable. And right now, it's come back around to the Man City side of things. And I do believe, of course, it's going to swing back in Arsenal's favor eventually. But it was Manchester City at Wembley. And it was a chance for Arsenal to break the trophy hoodoo under Mikel Arteta. And you really could have not, like, the thing I would have said is, you don't leave any stone unturned. You don't leave any possibility out there for mistakes. You cover every avenue. And for me, I think it was negligent to start a goalkeeper who, by the way, if you look at his record in Carabao Cup finals in the past, he's never won. Never won. Multiple times he started. I believe this was his third start in a Carabao Cup final. One of them, by the way, famously, he refused to get subbed out, if you remember that. That's literally the iconic moment in his career. And, you know, look, here's the truth behind Kepa, right? So let's take a look at some of the games before. So Arteta, and maybe I overlooked it as well a little bit as a fan, but I kind of knew, though, that you had to start Raya because you wanted to take no chances. But Kepa's record up till that game, right? So he had not started at all in the Premier League, right, this season. So he started all of Arsenal's FA Cup games and all of Arsenal's Carabao Cup games. Now let's take a look at the scorelines of Arsenal's Carabao Cup games and his performances in them. I'm just going to quickly take a look. EFL Cup. Let's go back to, let's just go Arsenal in the EFL Cup. Let's go back. What was the first one? It was, which round? It was round 3, I believe. Isn't that where we begin? It was Arsenal against Port Vale, I believe. That was the first one. Okay, so in Arsenal versus Port Vale, Kepa Arrizabalaga received a match rating from SofaScore of 6.6. Now, here's his stats for this one. Total saves 0, punches 0, runouts 1 of 1, high claims 1, 89% accurate passing, which is not great for a keeper, but I guess you include the long balls in there, which was 1 of 5. The passes in their own half, 34 of 35. Okay. The 43 touches. But it was a 6.6 overall. That was his score against Port Vale. That's his next appearance goes in the 4th round. Arsenal against Brighton. Now, if I remember correctly, Kepa did not have the best of games there. He was pretty shaky. He had some pretty shaky moments in there. He did have some good saves, important saves in Arsenal against Brighton. So let's take a look at his stats there. Again, okay, he's a 7.4 in this one. So, okay, it was a little bit better. He had to make 6 saves, 1 from inside the box, 1 run out, 22 of 40 passing, 55%. See, he was, his distribution in this game was pretty poor, but he made six saves overall against Brighton in this game. Again, that's Premier League opposition in that cup. Let's move on. Next one was, I still think it was the quarterfinal. We had not played in the FA Cup quite yet. Quarterfinal, Arsenal against Crystal Palace. Now, in this game, obviously, this is the game where you can say, hey, Kepa took us to Wembley. But if you recall, Arsenal won what on penalties that day? They won 8-7 on penalties. So, you know, he allowed in 7 before he finally didn't even really save the last one. I believe it was missed. It was, I believe it was Lacroix who missed it. In this game again, 69% in his passing, 31% okay, passes in his own half, 91%. Penalty shootout saves 1. Saves in the game actually 0. But again, the idea that Kepa would have saved Arsenal in that game, I think, was a bit of a myth, to be honest. He kept going the same way and kept getting beaten the same way, and eventually, he does get 1. So it was a save by him, of course. So, all right, the next one. Let's talk about just in the Carabao Cup. The Chelsea game. He concedes 2 goals to Garnacho at Stamford Bridge. Does keep a clean sheet in the last one, but I don't think Chelsea really offered much of a threat in that game. But like the idea that hey Kepa got you there, I think is a bit of a lie. Now if you look, he concedes goals to Portsmouth earlier in the game. He concedes against Mansfield. Like, it's not as if Kepa has been absolutely blinding. We're like, hey, Kepa, absolutely. He's like, he's been competent, but he's not been excellent. You know who's been excellent? David Raya. He's been one of the best keepers in the world. You had to start him. So I was a lot to say this, right? Just enough that, Kepa, we all knew that shouldn't be started. Now let's take a look at the lineup. Nketiah, Gabriel, Williams, Saliba, White. Now, Timber is injured. I would have started White. I don't think I would have done anything differently. I can't blame Arteta for that. He goes with Zubimendi and with Rice. Trossard, Havertz, Gyökeres. So here's the issue here. And I guess when the lineup comes out and I see that Havertz is starting in the midfield, I mean, you hear about Eze is gone, Odegaard's out. There's not really much else you can do other than maybe you start the kid. But I'm not start like Dalman, but you don't start Dalman in a final. I get it. I can't really blame Arteta for any of the way he set up the lineup. Nketiah at the time, if I were to tell you that, hey, I don't want Nketiah to start in that lineup, I would be lying. But as the game progressed, you obviously learned stuff, and so did he. I can't blame him because as I'm figuring this stuff out, he must be figuring that stuff out too, as me and Dan were saying last week. This is where Arteta has to blame in that cup final. Nketiah gets yellowed. Semenyo begins to therefore take advantage of the fact that he is kind of handicapped a little bit on that yellow card. He can't really fully commit himself into anything, and the territory starts to slowly go in Man City's favor. And as the half progresses, you see that Ben White and Nketiah are really kind of losing their battles against Semenyo and against Doku. At halftime, he needs to make the switch. He needs to be proactive. I've seen this again, we'll talk about the Southampton one in a second, but I've seen that in that game where I'm like, Nketiah comes off at halftime for Calafiori. The other thing that Calafiori brings you, which, now I've learned about this time at halftime, he does actually, from the left back position, give you a little bit of extra control. The control that Arsenal lacked with Kai Havertz in midfield. Now he's realizing, by the way, that Kai Havertz is lacking in midfield. We'll touch more about that in a second. But again, those changes need to come on. He's experimented with Saka as a number 10 in previous games. And that's one of the reasons why you do it in that one is, hey, let's put Noni Madueke right in here and let's chuck Saka in the 10 or chuck Dalman in the 10. Something. Just give me something that shows me that, hey, look, I've realized that right now Kai Havertz is getting absolutely dispossessed every single time. You need to recognize these things early and make a change. But the biggest one here is Nketiah for Calafiori, because that is where City make us pay. I mean, of course, again, and the other part where City make us pay, Kepa. Kepa makes a mistake. An error is only going to happen given the conversation about him, should he have started or not. Of course, as fate would have it, he makes a massive error, they score. But here's the other thing. He takes way too long to then at 1-0 when you're like, okay, fine. Even I said I thought that City might score first in my predictions. Let's make that change right now. Doesn't happen. Does not happen. By the way, he's sitting there by the fourth official, Calafiori and Martinelli, as the second goal goes in. And by the time that he able to make that change, it's too late. He needs to read the game. He needs to read the momentum. If us fans can sit there at home and see, hey, this change needs to be made, why does he have to wait all the way until whatever 60th, 70th minute before he makes the change, when all of us could see, even before the half, that change needs to be made, and it wasn't made? That's the Man City game. Here's the Southampton game, and it's this lineup. And look, you can say all you want to say about who's available, who's not available. There's a lot of talk going in, of course, about the players that were missing, and we'll discuss that a little bit further in kind of this. But after what we saw in the Cup, he goes back to Kepa. We've had 2 weeks off. David Raya is definitely not injured. It's this, and by the way, this is he's taken that philosophy of, hey, just ride with who brought you here, and he's gone even further with it in this FA Cup lineup. Portsmouth, Wigan, at home, by the way, and Mansfield Town, though that lineup, I get it. I get it. And by the way, at those times, those are times where we need desperately to rotate, but we're coming off of a 2-week break. We don't desperately need to rotate. These players are going to play against Sporting. What is one extra game? Miles Lewis-Skelly, we all know, is not good at left back. This is a quarterfinal of the FA Cup. Miles Lewis-Skelly starts. Again, Saliba should have started. He goes with Mascara, who, by the way, 6.2 rating from SofaScore. Ben White, after having been roasted, now I guess, look, Ben White, I guess, you know, you can understand again the selection of it if Timber's not ready to go. But if Timber's ready to play on Tuesday, I'm like, mate, you had to. Or either that, or you go with Mascara at the right back position and you put Saliba. But regardless of who's at right back, Saliba needs to be in there, and so does Calafiori from the start. I don't care. Now, this is where the midfield, and we're going to get more into that differently, but to go with two in the 10s, Odegaard and Havertz. Again, after we've seen what Havertz performed at Wembley in the 10, he goes back to it again. He's gone with Odegaard, and by the way, my man Dan pointed out very, very well, and we'll break that down, this lineup, even further, because with Odegaard and Havertz, with Norgard alone in the midfield, where's Zubimendi? Where is Rice? Rice isn't even in the squad. Zubimendi's on the bench. He acts as if this game isn't an important game, where we've just lost one trophy. The worst thing you could do is lose another. And now you can see it everywhere in the media. All the memes, all the everything. The worst thing you could do. We said this. We've said this prior. I've been on shows where we've talked about this. And he did not set up seriously. As I said on the terrace, he disrespected the FA Cup. And let's not even start with Gabriel Jesus up front. Gabriel Jesus, giving charity minutes to Gabriel Jesus in a quarterfinal of a competition that we absolutely have a really good chance to win. Liverpool went out earlier on the day. You know, that was one less rival that was in the hat. And you go with Jesus, your striker has come back with 4 goals over the international break. And Jesus, who's been on his ass, sorry to swear, is your answer? Again, where's Leandro Trossard? He doesn't make the team at all. Apparently he's been back in training now, hasn't he? But yeah, I've got some actually injury news. We'll get into it just shortly. but he's like there's no Trossard. I get, Martinelli, whatever. He's been good in the cup competitions at least. Dalman is a young kid, but again, I get why Madueke is on the bench. I was surprised he was even going to be in this team, or able to walk. There's a lot of stuff going on with Arsenal's injuries that surprising. The one of the players that I thought would be available, Saka, still not in training, but again, he's who I would have gone with on the right-hand side. He does go with Max Dalman. But the idea here is, and to make a long story short, so we can move on, because we've got 25 minutes of this video. I wanted to kind of keep this shorter, but I've just gone on such a rant. This back four, Skelly, Gabriel, Mosquera, and White, has never played as a combination together the whole season. Never. Let's go into the next level. Odegaard, Havertz, and Norgard have not played as a combination all season. He goes for it in this quarterfinal. Jesus, Martinelli, and Dalman, have they ever played together at that front three? Never. And the worst part about it is, if things were going to go wrong, at least you have something to bring on the bench. And that was not the case. Now, he did have Victor Gyökeres, who came off the bench to score. He got Calafiori on. He got Saliba on eventually, but Saliba was on straight up for Gabriel. It wasn't to actually fix the issue. He does try to fix the issue with Zubimendi for Havertz at 79 minutes. There's no way. By the way, I'm looking at the injury. Declan Rice, knock. There's no way. Why is he not in the squad? Why is he not starting? How could you not go? The idea is, and we'll close again with why Arteta has screwed up here, is he has treated Southampton like if it's Southampton. It's like a team from the championship. Without looking at it, this is the quarterfinal. The same thing in the Wembley game. You take no chances. This is a chance to win a trophy. Let's go guns blazing. We have got a international break coming up. Now we're coming off of an international break, most of which our players, the ones that haven't played, didn't play. They were pulled from their teams. Didn't take them seriously. I've seen him take Inter and Kairat, games that Arsenal did not need to win, more seriously than this. It's absolutely a joke. This idea of, hey, this guy got me here, this cup thing, which Arteta has fallen into over and over and over and over again. It's not a thing. Arteta, look, I like Arteta and I want him to stay and I want Arsenal to win a trophy because I just think he's built something amazing. But he is culpable and to blame for what has gone on. There's Arteta. There's the Arteta piece for you, basically, altogether. It was just, yeah. All right, next move on, and we'll take these a little bit quick. Okay, midfield balance. Now let's go for it. I believe it was wrong in both games. Now, for the first time, basically all season, Arsenal really lacked control in a game of football. That was against Man City in the cup final. Now, having looked at the lineup originally, I probably wouldn't have, had much of a problem given the situation. We had found that Eze was out. All right, fine. And Havertz and Gyökeres have combined pretty well. And they almost did combine early on for a goal. But here's the issue with Havertz. And let's take a look at Havertz stats throughout this game. So throughout an entire game of football, you're number 10, attempts one dribble and doesn't make it successful. 0 for 1 for dribbles successful. You're number 10. 30 touches in the entire game. 50 passes in opposition half. 8 of 15, 53%. 10 of 18, 56%. That is not good enough. Now, this is the part that actually is really worrying. And you might think, hey, what's the passes in our half? This is where Arsenal struggled because he couldn't get on the ball. He couldn't relieve the pressure in the own half when we were defending. 2 of 3, 63%, 67%. in that situation, that is the guy who you need to get to, your number 10, so he can get you off the pitch. And he links that midfield to the attack and actually kind of with the defense a little bit. And look, the fact that Zubimendi and Rice didn't have good games either, and they had to play deep. Look at this. 1 of 6 duels won. 0 of 4 ground duels. 0 of 4 aerial duels. Like, he was absolutely like, that was the reason. I could see it throughout the game. In that game, that Rodri dispossessed him time after time after time after time. He was absolutely dominated, and he was exposed. You know, I had this thing. I thought our Havertz could be a 10. You know, he was at Leverkusen, and he had a good little run there before he got hurt. Remember, he was out for the Wolves and the Spurs and the Chelsea game. Everyone was, Brentford, I think, as well before that. And everyone was sort of like, oh no, Havertz, We found out, he put him in a big game in that position, in the 10. And when Arsenal's under pressure, and it's the opponent is tougher than, Kai Rat. I forget who was the other one. It was Sunderland he was really good in as well. But when it's Manchester City and Arsenal needed an outlet, she just needed to get the ball, win it, get fouled, move the ball up the pitch, whatever. Or link it, get us going in the counter attack, and that's an issue. Here's the next part. That about 20% goes to midfield balance. Now we got 12.5%, and I will explain. It's about 25% of the pie chart each, and they will link into each other. The first one, attacking intensity and clinical edge. In both of these games, like, I think they're a bit different. I can't say what's the same, but also come out with an intent to start the game in the Man City game, right? But then on out, we couldn't. And here's the problem. Man City have shown all year that they can get got at defensively. They're vulnerably defensively. And especially, they had certain players out, Guehi out, Diaz was ruled out. Arsenal should have been able to, in theory, go after that Man City defense. They couldn't. They didn't. As I said, they couldn't get out. They couldn't, and again, Kai Havertz has a lot to play. If you have, by the way, Rice and Zubimendi playing better games, and I think we'll get to why I believe those players, didn't really have good games that day, but we couldn't get out. We didn't have the attention. We didn't have the clinical edge. Not one bit. We didn't try and hit. The idea is, I thought the whole season was, hey, we want teams to come at us because then it opens up spaces for Arsenal on the other end. And Man City did have spaces. We just couldn't exploit them. We couldn't get there. They had clear weaknesses in the defense, and we just could not get out. Now, big credit to Man City's midfield and their attack for kind of pinning us in and putting us under pressure, but it was through a lot of Arsenal's own doing. Again, as I can go back to I mentioned the Calafiori and the Nkapie thing. Yeah, okay, we've already established that. But Arsenal lacked that sort of attacking intensity. We couldn't play the ball through the lines. We couldn't get out, and we couldn't finish. Now, in the Southampton game, I think it was a bit of a different story. In the Southampton game, I do believe that there were many periods of Arsenal had pressure. And Southampton, of course, had their pressure, and they should have had a few goals, whatever. But then all of a sudden, it seemed like, okay, Arsenal's got a grip on this. Odegaard and Dalman were looking pretty good, I think, from all point of views. We got in. Odegaard had a shot that he scuffed. Odegaard had another shot that he hit from long range, which was saved by the keeper. Arsenal looked like, we got corners. Arsenal looked like, we're on top in this game. Couldn't take advantage of anything. The shots just didn't really trouble Perez in the Southampton goal whatsoever, and we couldn't capitalize. Happened in 2 different phases of this, by the way. In the beginning, where Arsenal were at 0-0 and at 1-1. And even, by the way, at 1-0, like different times where Arsenal had so much dominance. Arteta mentioned it himself. They couldn't do anything. There was no clinical edge. That is a problem. And by the way, when you go long enough in the game without taking advantage of these periods, eventually what will happen is this. Now, this is something that Arsenal has not been accustomed to in general when we're playing at our best. And that's defensive errors. Now, eventually, given the way the Man City game was going, and yeah, we did soak up the pressure. We survived for quite a bit, but eventually Kepa makes a massive error that goes into the back of the net. We all know what happens. Again, it happens again for Man City's second, not necessarily Kepa, but I believe it was. We can go back and look at the videos, but I don't have enough time at this point. But you know, before you could blink, it was 2-0. Ben White absolutely makes the most horrendous error. By the way, both of these set the tones. It puts you 1-0 down in both of these games, right? Where he could not win the aerial duel, goes over his head, hits right down to the Southampton man, who scores. He just leaves us absolutely vulnerable. He's basically just got a one-on-one, clear as daylight shot with Kepa, and you know anybody of that level is going to punish you. Anybody, even at the championship, is going to punish you doing so. And then after we was 1-1, it looked like, hey, look, Arsenal's got this. And, you know, we got back to 1-1. All right, fine. Let's just take care of this. And Southampton, right before, you know, the end of the game, they come in. And, yeah, it was Ricardo Calfiori who made an error. And they're dancing through, and they're scoring. And it's just not Arsenal. Now, you can argue, hey, you know, Gabriel comes out at that time, whatever. But again, when you don't have that cohesion in the defense and you don't have that Raya in the defense, now it's not like as if Raya hasn't made his own defensive errors, but that is some of the stuff that's going on. That's the defense and the midfield, by the way. These two of the things. The Arsenal intensity and clinical edge has been a problem all year. Let's all admit that. But the defense and the midfield has been where we can kind of point everything to. And, you know, we lean on those things, and, you know, they've been lacking in these games. These type of errors is something that Arsenal just do not do. Defense is something that we lean on. It's been something that we, you know, it's what we're proud of Arsenal. It's one of the reasons why I thought Arsenal could win as many trophies as we have, why we've won so much. And again, I do think that, again, comes to blame a little bit for it is Arteta and not kind of using the right personnel. And maybe this is the reason for it. Again, this is why I put it as the least percentage, because I'm not the person who likes to make these type of excuses. Player availability. Now, the timing of Eberechi Eze's injury, as you can see pictured here on the Arsenal blame pie, was not great. Right before, by the way, he was on his best run of form in an Arsenal shirt by far. He had just scored a banger against Leverkusen in the same game. He pulls up injured. Now, we all thought he'd be fine. Everyone thought he'd be playing in the game, which is what we kind of got our confidence from. He didn't end up playing in the game. And I do believe that if Eze is in this game, it's a different game. By the way, it's another threat that City have to take account of. And it you know, leads to less midfield dominance. You have a player like Eze, that tricky player who can win games on his own, who won games on his own against them last year at Wembley. Timber missing from that cup final. You can see played a massive part. He does play a massive part. I'm going to say Raya because he's not in there. You know, I think that's a different game if Raya's in there. You know, even Odegaard missing from that cup final. Now that was totally hindsight, you know. But then we get into the international break. By the way, one more thing on player availability. I do kind of feel like, and I'll make this point because this is just, I know this is kind of the criticism part, but Arsenal had played, this was the 50th game of the season. Arsenal also just played midweek and they played the week before. For me, the fact that Zubimendi and Rice still haven't been in there after 2 weeks break shows me that those two players have been run into the ground, and we could have kind of seen it for a long time. One thing we need to take into account, which is why Arsenal have so many players who couldn't make international break, is because Arsenal played an abundance of games, an insane amount of games. Now 51 games. Now we've got, it'll be out of 63 now potentially because we're out of the FA Cup, and maybe from that perspective, That's less games for Arsenal have to kind of balance, and maybe the players might be better. But clearly, they are burning out. I'm not using it as an excuse. This is a piece of analysis to try to figure out what's going on and why that Wembley final was so bad, and we haven't seen them back. They did, Zubimendi play a little bit for Spain, then went home. Rice didn't play at all. Didn't get picked for the team against Southampton. Something's going on. The player availability definitely is a thing, and it's not like these players are all with serious injuries. They're with smaller sort of injuries, but that is kind of where I can say, hey, look, I don't know enough about what is going on with these players, and maybe that plays into Arteta's lineup. But again, it's definitely a factor, but it's also a reason why Arsenal fans shouldn't panic, because at the end of the day, the team that played Southampton was a massively rotate team. Let's take a look one more time at that lineup. Arsenal's best 11, and let's just say who was there and who was not 11. Was Raya in the game? No, that's 0 for 1. Was Hincapié or Al Calafiori starting? I kind of combine one of them. No, Lewis Skelly started. Gabriel started. That's 1 of 3. Saliba, did he start? No, that's 1 of 4. Timber, did he start? That's 1 of 5. Norgard, does he start? Where was Rice? 1 of 6. Zubimendi, where's Zubimendi? 1 of 7. Where is Eze? 1 of 8. Now, Odegaard's in there. I guess you can say 2 of 8, maybe. I'll say Odegaard, in the Arsenal's best team, 2 of 8. Where's Eze? I've moved him to the left wing. Martinelli's in there. 2 of 9. Where's Saka? 2 of 10. Where is Gyökeres? 2 of 11. So only 2 of Arsenal's best 11 started against Southampton. Now, coming off the bench is Calafiori and Gyökeres and Saliba and Zubimendi. They come on later on in the game. But they should have been starting at the beginning, and you need to kind of send the intensity. You're also just giving belief to that Southampton team. The way Southampton were able to move it so quickly and on the counter-attack with so much intensity all the time was an absolute highlight of why that thing went on. But anyway, that is the Arsenal blame pie. Let me know, guys, what you think about it in the comment section. Would you have anything else in there? Maybe give me your blame pie. Give me the percentage. I know some of it will be banter. Some people will say Arteta 100%. I'm trying to just be balanced, be reasonable. And so this kind of here is your Arsenal blame pie. It took me about 43 minutes to break it down, but there you go. And now we're going to sort of move on now here to where Arsenal can go forward, and we're going to go with our traditional under pressure list. So we've taken about 43 minutes again to break down what we believe has been the reasons for those last 2 games. And I feel like I was pretty thorough in breaking down kind of a lot of what I felt was wrong with Arsenal last 2 games. Let's talk about moving forward, because Arsenal is still 9 points clear at the top of the Premier League. I've said it on many occasions, I still believe that I think it's almost virtually done, but that's from the perspective of my faith in Arsenal and the consistency they've shown this season. I just don't think that there's enough of a place for things to go wrong enough for Arsenal to lose the league with a 9-point gap. Now, there are scenarios and people have written them now as in how that thing can go by quickly, and we can talk about them for a second. I don't like to put them out in the ether. The other thing is the Champions League. So my predictions at the start of the season were that Arsenal were going to win both the Premier League and the Champions League. This was at the start of the year. I couldn't even tell you I had. Let me go. Actually, I had this in the football under the football terrace. Oh man, it was so long ago. But I had post transfer window. I had Liverpool winning the FA Cup, wrong on that. I had Chelsea winning the Carabao Cup, wrong on that. But I had Arsenal winning both the Premier League and the Champions League. And Arsenal were top of the Champions League. They're into the quarterfinals now. We're going to have a game against Sporting Lisbon coming up, and Arsenal are 9 points clear at the top of the league. Now, this is where things can kind of go from bad to worse, and this is why I'm putting up this Arsenal under pressure list now to avoid this from happening. Okay, and yeah, this is a different type of Arsenal under pressure list. This is the biggest under pressure list I've had the whole year, but we're going to run through it as quickly as possible. I'm going to just give you kind of a breakdown as to why, and this is all kind of Arsenal related in terms of what needs to be done and who really needs to step up for Arsenal to achieve these goals. So here's the scenario that we are trying to inspire Arsenal away from. We can't, after those two games, now go into the Champions League game away from home and lose it. Now, a draw, again, means we take things back home. That's fine. I guess I will take that. I'm not going to put that in. I'm not going to speak out of both sides of my mouth. I think Arsenal will win and should win against Lisbon away from home. But if it's a draw, the same thing I said after Leverkusen, which is, let's take it back home. This is what the good teams do. Teams that win this competition do. They just take care of business at home. But let's say you lose that, you have a similar performance to the last games, then all of a sudden your Champions League hopes are dangling by a thread. Let's say we lose to Bournemouth and City have just a big win against Chelsea away from home. Yeah, that won't be good. It would be cut to 6 points with them having a game in hand. Then if they beat us head to head, all of a sudden it'll be cut to 3 points with them having a game in hand, and then they could play that game in hand against Crystal Palace, and it would be all level. Now we do have a quite substantial gap in terms of the goal difference at this point, but I imagine that if that was to be the case, it would be closed down. Then we're really in a title race and then we have to go then to Lisbon. I don't know what would have happened, by the way, between now and then. Let's say in that period of time, Arsenal lose both legs, we're out. But we're trying to avoid. We don't want all of a sudden be challenging for a quad and then all of a sudden have nothing within the space of weeks. That would be bad. Now the Premier League, of course, is going to go all the way to the end. I don't imagine the Premier League is going to evaporate that like that. But Arsenal need to maintain. They need to stamp it out now with the Champions League, and this is where we begin. Let's start with Mikel Arteta, and yes, that is the first name on the under pressure list. I've went for long enough to talk about what Mikel Arteta has done wrong in the last two games, but here is the facts, ladies and gentlemen. And Mikel Arteta said it himself. Look, that was the low point of our season. We have got so much potentially amazing moments to go for the rest of the season. He said, this has been a hard period, but it's going to become even more challenging in terms of the challenges ahead of us. This is the two hardest trophies to win I believe, in club football, both the Premier League and the Champions League. Yes, the Premier League. But if he doesn't, especially where we are sitting right now with a 9-point gap, well, I've said I believe the league is over. If by somehow, some way, we actually don't win the league and this Man City team somehow gets themselves in the Premier League title from where we are now, Arteta has to go. Like, I will become an Arteta outer. As much as I'd hate it and it would make me feel sick to my stomach, I love Arsenal more than anything else. And if this guy has shown me he literally not got the bottle, he's not the leader that we need. If he can't get us to one trophy from this point, that would be it. But he could do the reverse now. He can pick up this group. He can get things right tactically. And all he needs to do, as I will elaborate in this list, is go back to what has been working for him so much this season. And let's kind of break through kind of all that down. But the idea of Arteta on this list, obviously, is that he needs to win. I need to win the Premier League, really. But if we bottled the Premier League but somehow won the Champions League, I'm still happy because and I'm talking about as somebody who's done something that no other manager has ever done in this football club history. So get me one of the two. Get me both would be amazing, but get me one of the two at the late. We need to leave this season with something. And if not, it's time to change at the top of the helm. That's the idea. But let's move on. Next thing, David Raya. We've spoken about, Kepa. David Raya is your guy for the rest of the season. Let David Raya now, who by the way, I believe has had a great season now. He has had a few bad moments this season, but I think he had more great ones than not. He's made saves that really saved us points in different times, and that is kind of what we're going to need to be doing. One thing that Raya does is gives us stability at the back. He catches and claims everything in his area. He gets us going. He's so press resistant. He gets us going back in the attack as quickly as he possibly can. He's a master with the ball at his feet. And Arsenal are just so much more comfortable. This David Raya, I can tell you, with having seen Kepa the last two games, the comfortability that I have with Raya, I just put my feet up. I'm like, okay. The lack of nervousness when I have with David Raya's in goal in terms of what the opposition can do to me to hurt me is it's night and day. He's an absolute blessing to have as an Arsenal goalkeeper, and I'm so happy that barring injury, he should be now there from here to the rest of the season. We've got 12 games to go now between the sticks from here on out, and Arsenal are going to be in a much better position for it. But he's got to do it now because, prove us right that Arteta made a mistake in starting Kepa in the last two games. So, and I don't see a reason why he will now from now on, because Raya, by Arteta's very own logic, has gotten us here in the Champions League and in the Premier League. Next up, Odegaard or Eze? I'll take a pick. Now, the idea here is, as I mentioned, the Kai Havertz point. He couldn't, I blamed him solely, almost really, for that Wembley thing. I break it down for you. Why Arsenal got beaten: Kai Havertz at the 10, Rodri dismantled him. I kept saying, if you had Eze or Odegaard in that number 10 position at Wembley, that's a different game. You have a controller in there. Now, you kind of, again, negated that controller element of Odegaard because you went with a single deep number 6 without Zubimendi and Rice. If you have Zubimendi and Rice in there and that they've got their legs back, you got Odegaard, who's in there as a controller, who's a distributor, who's a creator. You got Eze in there, who's a distributor, who's a creator, who, by the way, he makes moments himself. He's a maverick, controls the game, wins fouls, gets us up the pitch. People saying, hey, you can't defend all the time. Yeah, but part of it is dead ball situations, free kicks, winning corners, creating chances, the whole lot. Havertz was not doing in either of those last two games. Now, the reason, by the way, amazing news that's come out, and I really spoke. I wanted to kind of talk about it earlier when we were talking about the injuries and Arsenal availability. We do have reports about Arsenal's training heading into Sporting Lisbon, and the most remarkable report, by the way, Declan Rice, by the way, is back in full first team training. That is not surprising. Gabriel is in full first team training. We'll get back to that in a second. But Eze is back in full first team training for Arsenal ahead of our Champions League game. He was supposed to be out for 4 to 6 weeks. We thought maybe Man City. We thought maybe West Ham away. No, he might be back already. Now, to what extent? For me, if it's me, I'm using him as minimally as possible because I don't want to risk him as much, especially because I know that Odegaard is fit. But what you can do now is use these two in combination, like you've kind of done with your striker, but your striker needs to stay now, which is kind of like play one for a little bit and then play the other, or vice versa, right? Use a combination of amongst the 90 minutes now of these two players. But between them, they should give you that creative spark, and then Arsenal needs it. We need to generate more chances. We need to generate better chances, and we need to get players running in behind. But most of all, we just need to gain that control back in midfield. And I think between the two of them, one of these guys, whether you start both, I would love to, by the way, if both are available eventually and starting to both, you're confident in their health, I want to see Isaiah on the left. I want to see Odegaard on the 10. I want to see both of them together with Saka on the right, because I think that's Arsenal's best attack, and that's kind of the ace that Arsenal still have to sleeve. One of the reasons why I have the confidence is that in these last couple games, we have not had our best available team in either of the games, and we have the possibility to kind of do that moving forward now. Now let's go on to the next kind of bit, and the Rice and Mendy. When I say Rice and Mendy, by the way, the fact that neither of them start in the Southampton game, I've gone on enough about why that's a disrespect, why that's disgraceful. But now I expect them, they've had enough rest. I need them revitalized, and they need to start every single game. This midfield pairing for me has been the bedrock of Arsenal. Now behind them, we got a pairing, which we'll discuss later, who's also been in combination the bedrock of Arsenal. But as long as these two guys are there, and Rice is doing what he does, and the work rate, and he wins balls on one side, and he creates chances on the other, and the impact he gives you from set pieces. Mendy, he's the guy who keeps things ticking along. Again, he gives a platform for the players I mentioned earlier, Odegaard, Eze, to perform and to be able to kind of make an impact in their own kind of ways and be freer. These two need to be there, need to be winning the ball back. We need to be pressing, winning the ball back high, getting it back into our attacking areas, and protecting our back four better. Because a single pivot of Norgard, you saw what that creates. Southampton saw it right away, and you can tell that from the beginning. I need both of these guys playing. I need them playing the rest of the game. If they're rested, and it ends up like in Arsenal winning something and things turn around from here on out, and these guys are spectacular for the rest of the season here, then I'll be like, hey, Arteta, you know what? Maybe you had to sacrifice the FA Cup to make sure that everything else was good. Because, yeah, you could tell these guys were on a gas. Hopefully they've got their full energy in there. But if they are, and you get Rice and Mendy pairing, I think Arsenal will be just fine. Next up, I've said it, Victor Gyökeres. He's now on 17 goals this season. This, for me, is the man who's going to get Arsenal over the line. He is on form now. He got under so much criticism, and everyone had talked to me about Glock Watch while he was struggling. Where's the Glock Watch now when he's got 4 goals in an international break, a hat trick, and then, by the way, he got himself the winning goal for Sweden to send them to the World Cup. And when he comes back for Arsenal, he gets Arsenal the equalizer. 5 goals in his last 3 matches. Now, we skip the cup final, go back to when he scores against Everton. But now we've got 6 goals and 6 and 5 then? For Victor Gyökeres, it's more than a goal a game. He is now on form, and I think he's going to smash the 20 goal mark. I was trying to say, hey, just get to 20 goals. I think he's going to smash it. There's a potential he gets past that after Sporting. I keep saying, I think. Now, is it going to happen? Probably not. In my fantasy, it's a hat trick. If it happens, I'm fucking bringing out some sort of belt to brag to everybody. But he's the guy now. He's banging goals. He's the hot hand. Feed him. Feed the hot hand. Let him carry you, because put the ball across the 6-yard box. See what he can do. Feed the beast. I believe if you get that now, Gyökeres, which the reason why we signed this guy was to, hey, it's so funny. I've been seeing, talking with people, hey, Gyökeres, he's not the striker for Arsenal that Arsenal need. I do believe he will, and he's going to show you that, and that he's under pressure to do it, to deliver it. This is why you bought Victor Gyökeres into Arsenal. He's hitting form. Now let's deliver in the Champions League and the Premier League for Arsenal. What better time now, Victor, than go back to your old stomping grounds to Lisbon and deliver and get Arsenal a huge win that we absolutely will need on Tuesday night. And of course, let's start scoring goals again in the Premier League as well. Next up on the list, the defense. Well, I believe was the best defense in Europe. Through October, they had never not conceded a goal in the entire calendar month. We were on pace to breaking records. Now, of course, Gabriel gets injured. Another good news, by the way, on the injury front is Gabriel has been training again. So he came off with an injury. He seems to be just fine. Saliba, they need this partnership here. And Jurrien Timber, by the way, still, I believe, missing from training, which is concerning. And Capier is missing from training again, which is concerning. But I need those guys back. I need to have that unit. I don't trust Ben White anymore. He's kind of lost my trust. And if Timber's not available, I'm putting Mascara at right back for Arsenal. Just with Calafiori at left back. That's what we got to do. But get back to Arsenal's bread and butter, to the defense, the best defense in Europe, and trust them. We don't need to sit. We don't need to play scared because you have got these guys. The recovery tackles these boys are capable of making are insane. The way they defend in the box is insane. This is the best two center backs in the world, and both of them play for Arsenal. The defensive unit have got to step up for Arsenal if we're going to win it. And I seriously believe that Arsenal have a response. And that's kind of how I'm going to close the video when I get there. Next one is Bukayo Saka. Look, I think he's had a better season than people are making it out to be, but I also think that he's a season that he's had that's below his standard. Bukayo Saka is our talisman. He's being paid 300k a week. People are writing him off, and I think that he now has to. Again, didn't play for England, didn't play against Southampton, still not back in training apparently for Arsenal. So there's something to watch there. He has had knee discomfort, so I guess Arsenal's trying to, watch that as much as they possibly can, but let him kind of get through that. But we need him. We need him, and he needs to be making more of an impact. I need him to be looking for Gyökeres as well, but also I need him to creating goals and moments for himself. I need him to be a little bit more aggressive. But the thing is, with him and with Rice, those set piece deliveries are absolutely huge. But I think Saka, Starboy, is going to have to deliver now at the biggest moments. This is what this is all about. You have a chance now to have moments that win you Premier Leagues, win you the Champions League, the stuff of legends. It's time now, Saka, to deliver it. The last one here, set pieces. Now, no set piece goals in either of the last two games. We did not score a set piece goal against Everton. We did not score a set piece goal against Leverkusen. Whether people like it or not, I don't love the banter or whatever about set piece goals. Who gives a shit? I want them. I know it's something that Arsenal's good at. It's like that's like the Eagles without the tush push. You need the corners. You need the free kicks. And they need to come back. We utilize them as a weapon. You're going to have Saka. You're going to have Rice back, hopefully. Gabriel's still there. We have to do how we've been doing all season, what's made teams terrified of the Arsenal, and that is from set pieces. And guys, look, we went over an hour in an Under Pressure show, and I hope you guys have made through it the entire video. I broke down a lot you in this, but here's the point now. It's not always about when you are in a bad patch like now, right? What defines you as a team, as a great team, is not about what's gone on already. You kind of put that in the rearview mirror. Now you have to respond. It's about how you respond. How does Arsenal respond? I'm putting on you. This is the pressure, right, guys? How do you respond? That has been my Arsenal special on Under Pressure. Guys, let me know what you guys think about, in the comment section below. How are we feeling about Arsenal right now? Are we in full meltdown mode? Are we panicking? Do we have an understanding? Because I just feel like this is what it is. This is what mentality is. I know it's hard, man. I'm pissed. And I'm not saying, you're not hearing me say once, hey, the FA Cup or the Carabao Cup, whatever, good riddance. Now, I mentioned reasons why there could be reasons why it's good to have reduced sets of 2. Now, the Carabao Cup is nothing. That was it. You know, you win it or you lose, whatever. The FA Cup, disappointed. Now, in hindsight, having seen the draw, Southampton is actually going to play City at Wembley, so we have avoided another matchup against Manchester City, which could have been cataclysmic for how the season goes on. Maybe it's good that we only have to play them one more time at the Etihad, and that's it. We will see. But guys, thank you so much. It's been an hour and 5 minutes I've gone through this Under Pressure segment, guys. We will be back tomorrow with the Anton and Dan show. Dan and Anton show, my apologies. Yeah, again, it would be nice for me and Dan to one day have a gloat session. We're going to have to now, again, lick our wounds from another massive cup defeat. But, you know, that should be, we'll let you know. I'm not confirming 100%, but I expectation is for there to be an Anton and Dan show tomorrow. Until next time, but if not, we'll see you on the post-game show for Arsenal against Sporting Lisbon. Again, as I said, content will be coming the whole week. But until next time, guys, Anton out.